Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Natalia Leigh. I'm an indie author and the managing editor at Enchanted Ink Publishing, and today I am bringing you another video for my super easy writing tips series. Today we are discussing filler and filter words. This was a request on a previous video. The person who requested it said that they can get a little bit confused about what filter words are versus filler words. So today I'm going to make that super clear for you. We're going to go over like a brief summary of filler and filter words. I'm going to give you some examples and then let you know why your manuscript would benefit from a close self-edit or a professional edit, paying attention to removing filler and filter words. So I'm going to try to make it really quick, precise, and to the point so that you can get back to writing and improving your storytelling. Let's get started. Okay, let's start with a very brief explanation of what each of these are. So filter words are a POV issue. They are a show versus tell issue, one of many show versus tell problems that I often see in manuscripts that I edit, and they create unnecessary distance between your reader and your characters. And then on the other hand, filler words are pretty much exactly what they sound like. They're just added filler. They're excess words that you don't need. Sometimes you can remove these words completely and it will really help your sentences. And then other times, if you remove these filler words, you can then replace them with a more descriptive adjective, a more descriptive verb, etc., in order to fill in kind of the gap that those filler words have left in your sentences and in your manuscript. So let's go ahead and dive into filter words first. I'll give you some examples, we'll go over it, and then we will discuss filler words in more depth. So like I already mentioned, filter words are a POV issue and one of many show versus tell issues. There are so many problems within manuscripts that can contribute to show versus tell, and this is definitely one of them. So filter words are often used to express sensory experiences. So we're going to be looking at words like saw, felt, heard, etc. And when these words are used, they create a bit of a filter between your reader and your story. So if you almost picture like a very thin material that is like filtering your story to the reader, that might be a good way to remember this. It's almost like your reader is getting less of an experience when they're reading your novel. They're not seeing it as clearly, they're not experiencing the emotional impact as deeply, so that's why you want to remove that filter, remove those filter words, so that your audience and your readers can have a more deeply impactful experience reading your book. So let's go ahead and dive into a few examples. These are really simple sentences, and of course there can be much more complex sentences with filter words, but I think this is going to be a good way to demonstrate what I'm talking about. All right, the first example is she felt her stomach growl, and of course we all know what that feels like. She felt her stomach growl versus her stomach growled. Like, we can understand that if her stomach is growling and she's the POV character, that she is obviously feeling it and probably hearing it as well. So we really didn't need she felt. So part of that like show versus tell issue that I mentioned is that whether we're in a first person point of view or a close third person point of view, usually a third person limited point of view, anything that is communicated to the reader is something that the viewpoint character first has to experience. So in order for us to be aware that her stomach growled, right, if she's our viewpoint character, she has to feel it, hear it, and experience it. So we don't need to be reminded that she is experiencing it and then relaying that information to us. I hope that makes sense. All right, second example. I heard the engine roar to life versus the engine roared to life. So with these examples, I hope that you can already tell that by removing the filter words, you have a much more concise and impactful sentence just by removing a few words, a few choice words. And then the third example here is he saw her walk through the door versus she walked through the door. And of course, in this example, we're assuming that we are in his POV, whoever this character is. So if he views her walking through the door, we don't need to be reminded that he viewed her walking through the door. She just walks through the door and he sees it. So again, that's where the POV issues and the show versus tell issues are coming into play. And something to keep in mind is that filter words can occur in all POVs and all tenses. There are some things like head hopping, which I previously discussed, and that's in the playlist that'll be linked down below, the video discussing head hopping. Head hopping is much easier to do in a third person POV. You can do it in first person, and I do see head hopping in first person, but it's much easier to do, you know, accidentally do in a third person POV. But filter words, they're just everywhere. It really doesn't matter if you're writing in first or third, present or past tense. Filter words will creep in often when you're trying to explain or describe or communicate sensory experiences that your character or characters are having. So do please keep that in mind. And now we can discuss filler words. Okay, filler words do not create POV errors. They do not necessarily put distance between your reader and your characters. They're not filtering an experience to us. They are pretty much exactly what they sound like. Like I said, they are just filler. They are additional words that don't really do anything for us. It kind of reminds me of, like, you know, when you buy, let's say, food for your animal, and if you're somebody who likes to be like really aware of the food that you're feeding your pets, you might know that you don't want like filler products, right? And what you're feeding to your animals. You want it to be clean, like whole food products. So it's kind of similar with this, and you don't want your sentences having a lot of filler words, just unnecessary additional words and phrases that don't offer additional clarity. They don't, you know, offer more impactful experience to your reader. They're just there. They're usually going to muddy up your sentences, and you can typically remove them or replace them with something else. So I'll give you an example of where you could simply remove a filler word, and then also an example of where by removing the filler word, you then have to replace it with a more descriptive verb or adjective. So we're gonna look at examples of both of those. Okay, here is one of my favorite filler words, and by favorite filler words, I mean it's one of the words that annoys me the most, and that is suddenly. So here's the example. Suddenly the door opened versus the door opened. So typically when we are using the word suddenly or all of a sudden, our hope is that it'll feel like jolting for the reader. Oh, if I put suddenly, it's gonna make them feel like something is suddenly occurring, but it actually does the opposite of what we intend for it to do. When you use the word suddenly or all of a sudden, you're just adding additional words and delaying the thing that suddenly happens. So there are very, very few instances where I feel like the word suddenly actually adds something to a sentence. I would say 99% of the time you can remove the word suddenly or the phrase all of a sudden, and then that thing is actually happening suddenly. So remember that the word suddenly and the phrase all of a sudden, they're filler words, filler word and filler phrase, but they do the opposite typically of what you intend for them to do. Here is the next example, and it's another word that I kind of can't stand, and that is the word just. The example is, he just can't help it, versus he can't help it. So this word, again, it can be completely cut and it just makes the sentence clearer. The only instance where, you know, the word just or other filler words might be kind of okay to leave in your manuscript, in my opinion, is in dialogue. Characters, when they are speaking to one another, especially if you're writing like a modern day story, we don't speak in grammatically correct sentences. You know, there are people who use the word like all the time, like they're always like talking like this, right? So filler words like that can be okay in dialogue if that's the way that the character actually speaks. But in narrative, you really don't need these filler words, and by cutting them, you're just gonna have much clearer and more concise sentences. So those first two examples, you can just cut the filler word and you don't have to add anything in. In this third example I'm about to show you, when you cut that filler word, you would then need to replace it with something else. So these are going to be like very, really, totally, and variations of those words, definitely, stuff like that. The sentence is, the water was really cold. So if we remove the word really, the filler word, we have the water was cold, which is fine, but how cold was it? If you're using the filler word really, you're probably trying to communicate that it is colder water than just cold. So by cutting really or really cold, you could then say the water was frigid or the water was freezing. And then it's better communicating to the reader how cold the cold water is without having to use really or very. It was really cold, it was very cold versus it was freezing or it was frigid. So sometimes, like I said, when you remove that filler word, you're going to want to replace it with a more descriptive verb or adjective. So an example could be the sentence like, he was running really fast. And of course, really fast is explaining how he's running, but you could replace all of that, running really fast, with he was sprinting. And now suddenly we're using a more descriptive verb and we are able to cut the filler word very or really and more clearly communicate to the reader what your character is doing and how they are doing it. Now, there are so many filler words out there. I have a video on filler words. It's a few years old at this point, but I'm still proud of that video and I think you could find it really helpful. So I'm gonna go ahead and link that video below. It's called 40 Words to Cut from Your Novel. I also have a printout of those 40 words if you think that that would be more helpful to, you know, keep in your office or put in your series Bible or in your writing binder. And in order to get that printout, all you need to do is sign up for my newsletter. I do not spam you at all. I really don't send out many newsletters, but that's just where I have this little downloadable printout. So if you're interested in the 40 Words to Cut from Your Novel printout, you can sign up for my newsletter at the link down below. So I hope this video was helpful. Again, if you get confused between filter and filler, you can actually physically picture like a filter that the story is going through, like a filter, a very thin material between your reader and your story, and those words are like filtering it to them so it's not as impactful, versus filler words, which are just kind of like additional crap that you don't need in your sentences and you don't need in your story. And it's not incorrect to have those in your story. It's not grammatically correct, it's not wrong. You can definitely use those if you feel like you need to or you just really want to, but by removing filler words, you're going to elevate your writing and it's not going to feel as beginner. It's going to feel like, you know, a more polished story if you make the effort to remove filler words and then, of course, filter words, POV issues, show versus tell, etc. If this is something that you would like a bit of help with, I do offer line editing services. You can learn more about our editing services at enchantedinkpublishing.com. That will be listed down below. We do tend to book out very quickly, so if you know that you want to work with us this year or in the beginning of 2023, now is a really, really good time to reach out. If you have any requests for future videos in this series, make sure to leave them in the comments down below. I have pulled the past 2 video topics, filler versus filter words, of course, and then the head hopping topic, from comments on my videos. So I'm always pulling from those comments. If there's something that you absolutely want to hear me talk about, get my opinion and my 2 cents on, please leave it in the comments down below so that I can add it to my list of videos to be filmed. All right, that is all I have for you today. I really hope that you are going to open your Word document or your Scrivener document or your Pages document and go on a hunt for filler words and filter words. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.